Hello, everybody. My name is AJ Barrios, and I'll be your instructor for this class for disaster security deployment. A little about myself. I am a security, firearms, and detectives instructor for the state of Georgia. I am board certified. Um, I've done security for a variety of clients. Done security for companies like Securitas, G4S. Worked overseas with companies like Triple Canopy, Special Operations Consulting, and also worked directly for the Department of Defense, the Department of the Air Force, and a variety of other clients. I worked for some a lot of big names. I worked for little dinky ones. Done everything from entry control, access control to executive protection. And right now, what we're looking at, and we're just looking at a couple of pictures of different disaster areas. On the top right happened during Hurricane Katrina. That guy is actually a security officer. Doesn't look too professional. As you see, he has his gun dangling from his jeans, and he has, I believe, an SKS rifle. But security was needed, and he was there, and they were paying him to do that function. Um, on the top one of the top pictures, the one red car that happened to do in Puerto Rico. There's a area down there where they have armed security that looks paramilitary that is conducting patrols and entry control in a well-to-do area in San Juan. And the bottom, that is G4S, one of the larger companies in the world. Actually, I believe it is the largest employer in the world next to Walmart. And they're doing security down there for one of the fires that happened in California, which happens often. So a lot of times what they'll do, they'll go and they'll try to secure what they can secure, and they'll help evacuate people. So it's an important job. A lot of people, they expect the government to do everything, and the sad reality is that you need help. The government can't take care of everyone all the time. The government's focused on their mission. They would love to help everybody all the time, but they have priorities, and people get, and the whole mix of things, priorities get mixed up. And that's where we come in. So right now we'll go over the overview. We'll talk about mental preparation for disaster deployment, physical preparation, interpersonal skills when it comes to communication, and the role of security. The reason you got to be mentally prepared, this is not just a regular job. This is not like you're going working over at a site. Let's say you're working at a mall, that you go there, you're like, oh man, I got to deal with those people. At the end of the day, you go home. Services will be there 99% of the time. You're going to have bathrooms, you're going to have water, you get to go home, you get to sleep in your own bed, you get to work in AC, you get to sleep in AC. Interpersonal communication skills, you should have that all the time, but some people are lacking in this. Um, you need to be able to communicate to people and talk to people, especially in times of stress. In stressful times, I make a lot of jokes, and you know what? That can actually be a problem. Some people will get annoyed. You know, I'm the type of person. Some horrific thing that happens. The way I deal with stress is I make a joke. I'm like, look, he bounced. And some people won't take that funny. So there's a time and place for that. And the role of security, which is us, when we'll go over that. So the overview is this course is designed to train experienced security officers in security operations in austere environments. So at the end of this course, you will be able to recognize the importance of adequate preparation and deployment to disaster area, mentally prepare for a deployment, physically prepare. You will develop interpersonal skills, or IPC, and you work with other security officers in a disaster area. Now we'll go over the definition of disaster security. That's the type of security that is offered by companies or individuals, where security officers are deployed to assist in managing emergencies and disaster recovery. Individuals executing this duty normally are trained not only in being a basic security officer and at times armed security. They are trained in and understand infrastructure protection and enable clients to work effectively toward their goals. We've seen what happens in times like during Katrina or what happened in Hurricane Maria. Everything goes to hell. I mean, everything goes to hell. Things are underwater, things are on fire, people are killing each other, and yes, insurance covers some things, but it only covers so much. So a lot of companies, Walmart in particular, like I was thinking about one off the top of my head, like during Hurricane Maria, Walmart put out a bid for private companies to come do security at their facilities because people are looting. They're looting why? Because they want stuff. And it's a bad thing that happens, and it's not like they're just taking food or just taking water. They're raiding the place, taking everything, which causes problems because even not only in places like that, but smaller places where you have a business, you want to make sure everything's still there when you get there, at least protect it somewhat, because people are crazy, and people are crazy, people are desperate. They don't care you're there, and depending on what the job is, sometimes it's very dangerous, and almost always it's very taxing on the individual. So they'll pay us, they'll pay you, your company, my company, whatever, to go down there and protect their stuff and or their people. Now we'll define things about disaster. Normally in the classroom, we'll sit down, we'll talk about what do you think a disaster means, and everybody has their definition because everybody has a different definition. Whether that is a subjective definition or objective definition, and we'll talk about elements of disaster. A disaster for some, it's really hard to put a number on things. You know, what is considered a disaster for somebody. Example, something silly. Let's say the Wi-Fi goes out or the internet goes out. For a lot of people, that is a disaster. They can't do business, they can't do this, they can't check email, they can't talk to clients. It's horrific. That is a disaster. Everybody else is like, I'm not dead. We're not on fire. I have food. What's the problem? So, well, that's how I talk about how different things mean different things to different people and different organizations. Now, there are different scales to measure this objectively. Like some people like having a physical number. If it reaches X amount, it's a disaster if this happens. It's a disaster if someone dies. It's a disaster if 10 people get hurt. It's a disaster if 100 people get hurt. So it's just different things for different people, and we'll discuss that more as time goes on. So like I said earlier, the definition is different depending on the lens you're looking through it. Um, there's an individual Borison in Periphery. I know I ate that up, that it destroyed that name, but he stated that despite many years of intensive research, there still exists a white gambit of interpretations, and still the basic question, what is a disaster, is different. Well, like I said earlier, it's different for lots of different people, and it still remains a problem to this day. You can look up the definition of disaster for different agencies, like FEMA, GEMA. They all have a different name, and depending what their job is, like this is a disaster if this happens for this people or this organization. It just depends on who's looking at it. Now we're talking about different lenses. Now this is just one objective lens to look at disasters, so people can look at it on paper and say this is this. Now, one of these, like the scale right here, a disaster is considered 100 human deaths, or at least 100 human injuries, or at least $1 million in economic damages. Now, it looks like a relatively small term. It's just 100 people died, but imagine those 100 people. It's like this is not really a disaster. This is just like it's a mishap. People get offended. People get hurt, especially when politicians get in the way. And it's they do their pandering. It's like, yeah, well, at least we just lost 100 people. Yeah, well, 100 human deaths. Tell it to their families. So it's really hard to quantify stuff, and we'll discuss further in a moment. Now, what we just looked at was the Bradford disaster scale, and it tries to incorporate puts things in numbers, and it's good for governments to have this because when it comes to people that are doing stuff, executing the emergency management, assisting in recovery operations, it's good to have a raw number so they can go off that. So that's why it's done. But as time goes on, things are different depending on the disaster, depending on how the disaster happened, or I'm sorry, not disaster, but the occurrence. That's how things roll. Our jobs is more just react to whatever happens, and we deal with things as they go on. So here's an example of the Bradford disaster scale. It goes with magnitudes like earthquakes, but in this case, it's different. So like 32 deaths will be considered as a magnitude 1.5 disaster, 95 fatalities 1.98, and so on and so far. Oddly enough, the planet being blown up, that's a 10. So you see how that goes. So I'm not sure how it would have worked if Thanos came over and snapped his fingers, but that's the way it goes. So a mass, that a 10 is like the world ends because of nuclear fallout, and there are no humans, or meteor hitting the planet, or us running into a black hole. And by that time, it doesn't really matter anyway. There's nothing to recover because we're all dead. As I stated before, it depends on who's looking at things, whether it's considered a disaster or not. I know in my family, one person dies, my family is considered a disaster, depending on who he is. Maybe, let's say, major tech CEO. He's the guy that knows everything about this new phone or this new cancer treatment. New cancer treatment drug, whatever. That person dies, it's gonna be a disaster. It just depends on what lens you're looking through things. So individuals, the regular people or the small business people, a disaster may be small. Hey, it might be just a tornado that just happened to touch down right on his business, and guess what? For that business or that block, it's a disaster. And it's more incumbent on us to just do our jobs. But as like you look at this right here, yeah, and the scale of this is considered a small disaster, but a fatality is still a disaster to somebody. And more of the critiques right here, once again, objectively, to be impartial, be a cold machine to say this is not a big deal, this is a big deal, it depends on who's looking at it. And a lot of the stuff is really subjective. What is it? What the people think a disaster are, and we're talking more of in a bigger view for everybody, all on the big scale of things. It's horrible. Don't get me wrong. It's horrific, but we're working for our clients, so we focus on the client stuff. If the client says it's a disaster, it's a disaster. This is more for you to get when you're working with in big disasters. Like you're working in areas that FEMA are there, maybe the National Guard's been deployed or the military or whatever. Not to say the National Guard isn't the military, but I'm talking about active duty versus reserve folks being activated. This for you to get in mind to understand, like if someone says something for you, like, what do you mean this is not a disaster? Just go with it. This is the way it works. And here's another criticism right here. Like right here, we're talking about how $1 million will not look like a great hardship in a bigger city like San Francisco because in the overall in California's economy, $1 million is a drop in the bucket. But small enough, $1 million is a huge freaking deal, especially for maybe a small community or a small business. And I don't know if I'm out of $1 million. That's a huge disaster for me. So it just depends. And the thing is, when you're working with people that you will work with people that are being affected negatively, they're going to be hot-headed. They might actually want to kill you. Just be aware. That's the way things are. It's horrific. Be nice, be professional, be aware of what's going on, though. Don't throw away your life because you're like, you're dealing with a lot of stuff. I'm pretty sure people are aware of what happened in Katrina. I know you people are aware of what happened in Puerto Rico, in Texas, and we're probably due for another disaster soon. As right now, it's 2019, so not looking forward to the next disaster, but these are how things are. Bad things happen.